Welcome to the Motherhood Alliance podcast, the podcast dedicated to empowering moms and families on their health and wellness journey. I'm Brittany Suttner.
And I'm Andrea Rinkus. Together, we're here to explore holistic approaches that go beyond conventional medicine.
Each week, we dive into topics that matter most to you. Everything from nutrition and mental health to alternative therapies and natural living.
And whether you're a new mom navigating the early stages of parenthood or a seasoned pro looking for new ways to support your family's well-being, you're in the right place.
Even better, all of our guests are local small business owners who you can actually talk to and work with. You can learn more about today's guest and connect with hundreds of other health and wellness professionals through our informative and easy-to-use directory at motherhoodalliance.com.
Before we get started, keep in mind that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personal healthcare advice. Please consult your healthcare provider before making any changes based on the podcast content.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Are you ready to help your family thrive? Let's get started. Hi, we are Britt and Drea from motherhoodalliance.com, and we are excited to welcome you to a 3-episode series with April McNamara, who is the owner of Functional Living with April, based out of Appleton, Wisconsin. Through her business, April specializes in providing in-home services to help families let go of clutter and simplify their homes. She also offers community workshops and classes to teach strategies on how to make a home more functional and supportive. April believes that our homes are more than just walls, they are an extension of us, and having a home that is both fun and organized can help make it easier to recharge, allowing us to have more time to do the things that we want and need to do. April's love of art also blends into her personal life, as she loves painting murals and doing crafts with her son, nieces, and nephews. She also enjoys ballroom dancing, traveling, trying new foods, and spending time in the woods with her husband and son. In our first episode together, April gives great perspectives and tips that can be applied to anyone. And then in episode 2, we zero in on how to keep a home with kids less chaotic and more manageable. And then finally, in episode 3, we talk about how we can help some older adults, maybe the more retired age, or even just empty nesters that we love, to live safely and joyfully in their homes long term. We're excited to share April's expertise and enthusiasm with you, so let's get started with today's conversation.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. We're excited to have April back here with us again. Welcome back, April.
Thank you.
We had a really good conversation in the first episode talking about being organized and being beyond organized, actually, I should say, and just creating that fun and functional home for each of us. And April had some really good perspectives and things like that. But this episode, we're going to be talking more about how we can have a more calm home, like especially for parents, especially for us. I mean, anybody. Nobody has an Instagram home, like unless you're taking pictures for Instagram, right? And so most of us have these like piles and these disorganized areas, and we want to take care of this, but sometimes we don't know how. And it can be overwhelming, especially when we have kids. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So can you tell us, it can be so overwhelming. Where do you even begin? Like, where do you start?
Sure. So, okay. Well, the way my brain works, when I have an idea or when I'm excited about something, or even when I'm feeling frustrated by a current process or something that's not working, I tend to dive into research. So I'll check out all these books from the library and I'm like sifting through. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. And kind of go through some of that information. And when I came across this concept called the clutter threshold, it was actually, and if you want to read further on it, Dana K. White, Decluttering at the Speed of Life, that's a really nice resource as well.
We can put that in the show notes too, if you give us that link. Yeah.
Sure. But she talked about, so clutter threshold, well, first of all, maybe talking about what clutter is. So clutter is all of that extra stuff that's overwhelming, the stuff that's just getting in the way of being able to function in our home. So clutter threshold is related to that. It's almost like your tolerance to the things in your home. And I like to kind of compare it to when you think of like pain tolerance. So, people have varying types of pain levels and what they can tolerate. You think of like giving birth is a different type of pain than having a sliver, and some people's responses to pain, it's just different from each other. So I was thinking of this example. So picture your child is poking you in the arm. You're like, okay, yeah, whatever. And then after a while, like if he keeps poking in the same spot, like, dude, that's kind of annoying. Right. And then all of a sudden he keeps poking it, and all of a sudden you're like, ow, oh, that really hurt. Because, you know, it's like this extra pressure and like it's been continuous. I almost think of that like clutter. It's all of a sudden, you know, you can be working at your table or like just kind of doing things in your home in the kitchen. And, you know, like maybe the junk mail is like piling up a little bit or just things are starting to pile up. And at first, you know, it's almost like it doesn't bother you.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you reach this point where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going mad because you have just surpassed your clutter threshold.
I think everyone can relate to this.
Yes,
everyone.
for sure. Yeah. So that's what I was thinking, like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, this is beyond my clutter threshold. I need to do something about it. And the only way to really get back to that sweet spot, to be within your clutter threshold, is to declutter. And I was thinking about this, you know, when I'm, you know, family members in the home, or even when you're helping family members, like when I started to look at it more objectively like that, I'm like, oh, we just have different clutter thresholds. Like my son's clutter threshold in his room is much different than mine.
Yeah.
Like mine is a little bit lower. I was like, okay, that pile of stuff on that desk is kind of like annoying me, but also trying to find this balance of respecting his space. He's learning, but providing some structure with that. And so then this comes in the next concept that I found really helpful for me as I was going through my own home. Because I had mentioned it a little bit in the first episode, just some of, you know, when life happens, you know, different seasons happen. And I think also, especially when you're kind of dealing with loss as well. So we had loss of loved ones, and then all of a sudden you're going through some of their items. Like that's just really hard and heavy on your heart sometimes. So I often find when we're going through things in our home and starting to try to get within our clutter threshold, start with the easy stuff. I think so often people start to think of like, oh, you're going to make me get rid of my, you know, my favorite things, or, you know, Nana's like silverware that we use every like Christmas time or whatever, you know, whatever things that are really meaningful to you. That no, don't start there. Don't start with the sentimental things. That's too much right now. I think, you know, almost like when you're starting to train for something new. So maybe it's like if you're training for a marathon, you know, you don't just run, was it the 26?
Yeah.
Point two.
Thank you. The 26.2 miles, like, oh, I'm going to run a marathon. I mean, some people, maybe they're like very physically fit and able to do that. I know for me that would be really challenging. Like I would probably start out with, I'm going to run around the block first and then work up to that. It's a similar thing with decluttering. Start small. So start with things like, you know, like the garbage. You know, when you open up the cabinet door and you go to grab that box of granola bars and then you look in it and you're like, oh, there's no granola bars in here.
Children, husband.
Like that, that's something, you know, okay, I can let this go. I can recycle that. So that's a good starting point.
Now, I've heard you talk a little bit about a container concept.
Oh,
so
yes.
What is this?
Yes. So I started to go on that. Sometimes I go on a side tangent and then we'll be back. But yes, with the container concept, this was another thing that really helped make it more objective for me. So picture in your mind a container. So maybe it's like a bin, like a storage bin. You know, usually there's like 4 sides. Usually sometimes you have a cover with it, you know, and you fill it with items. And when I started to think of like, okay, so this is a container, and the root word of container means to contain. So it means like, okay, so let the container be the boundary. Okay. So let's say I have this container of art supplies, and it can only fit so many crayons in it before it starts overflowing. And so that really kind of helped provide structure for me. I'm like, oh, okay, well then I can only have so many crayons in this container, whatever the container can hold. And so then I started asking myself, okay, well, are these crayons container worthy? You know, so you get to fill it with the things that you love most first. So then you start to apply that to other things like, okay, so this plastic container is a container. Well, then I'm going to put it in this cabinet.
Right.
And inside of this cabinet, that cabinet is a container as well. It can only contain so many of those plastic containers of art supplies in it, or towels, or whatever if you're thinking of like your pantry or your closets or your storage spaces, you know, it can only contain so many things. And then you start to expand there, like, okay, so inside of my closet, I have these shelves. The shelf is a container. I can only contain so many of these plastic little containers on it. And then the cabinets are a container. Well, this whole room is a container. I can only contain so many things in it. And then when you start to keep expanding, they're like, well, my home has several rooms in it. My home is a container as well. So what do I want to fill it with? And you want to fill it with your family, the people, and the things that you want to do come first. Then the things come after.
Well, and the things that you don't want don't belong there, right?
Right.
If you find yourself that you have too much stuff and it's over expanding your home, then that might be a clue, right?
Yeah.
And even the crayon analogy is really good, where it's like, how many crayons do you need?
Right.
So if this is the container you pick, this is plenty of crayons for our family. If you have an overabundance, how can I gift those, right? Going back to our first episode, how we talked about decluttering can be scary for some people. That can be a really heavy word. But if you think about, instead of saying when I might need this someday, somebody else needs this now, it helps you to give it away. So I think that that's really helpful. What do you recommend for organizing the endless like papers and crafts and knickknacks that our kids create, because they're important to them? So how would you recommend organizing those?
So I like to apply the container concept, with my son, and be like, I'll start out. And I will say for us, like art, and my son loves to write, and so we're kind of sentimental with those things. So we may have more containers for those things allotted to a specific contained area than some of our other things, because that's something that we value. But at some point you're like, this is a lot. So one of the things that I found helpful is I have this drawer in the dining room, and we just kind of put some of the paintings or the drawings that he's created, that sometimes we'll put it on the refrigerator for a little bit, and then it goes into this drawer. And then at the end of the year, we kind of go through that drawer, because we're like, oh, this container is full. Like, oh, buddy, which ones are your favorites to keep? And then the cool thing, one of the things that I really like, and especially with the holidays coming up around Christmas time, I love to use the extra artwork and turn it into wrapping paper.
Oh, that's
so that's just kind of a fun way, and grandma and grandpa really love that. But then you get to enjoy it more than once. Some strategies that I have found others have done is they'll take pictures and create books out of it. I think that's great if you're actually going to do that. Otherwise, digital clutter is like a whole nother world.
That's true.
A whole nother thing.
That is true.
But
yeah.
I think sometimes, maybe selecting your favorites. And one of the things that I love, going back to with Christmas is on my mind right now with the Christmas tree, making that a little bit more sentimental. So sometimes we'll convert some of the artwork into ornaments. So then every year we get to enjoy it. So that's kind of a fun thing as well.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, and taking that one step further, I think a huge piece that a lot of families are struggling with is when it comes to housework. So this is going to be kind of a two-part question here. We kind of started talking about systems in the last episode. What are your tips for helping decreasing housework within the home? And then do you typically turn that into a type of system, or how do you walk people through that piece? Because even if you have a well-organized home, essentially less clutter, there's still going to be muddy shoes coming in and dinner that needs to be made, and kind of the clutter that we create in a day-to-day use. So how do you help people with their mindset around all the chores?
Yes. So I have found there's different seasons in life, and I feel like the perfectionistic side of me sometimes will get kind of focused on a certain area, and then I take a step back and whoa, let's look at the big picture here. When my son, when he's really little, I love the fact that he's outside playing, so sometimes there's going to be muddy shoes, but I found that I tend to be more relaxed with that when I have less things to have to manage. So whether there's something kind of magical that happens too when you start to go through your things and you're starting to really simplify and reduce the amount of inventory. I read a statistic that said reducing the amount of clutter reduces your housework by 40%. And I was saying holy cow, that's almost, getting close to half, and you think about how much time you could save, what you could do with that time instead. And, one of the things that I found, for example, I can give an example about mopping the floor. So I'm really good at like the day-to-day things, sweeping, consistency with that. Some of these things, when you think of systems, some of them, I think just accepting that, you know what? Okay, if I'm making the meals at home, I'm probably going to have more dishes to wash. And it used to be this source of like, I think back to like where lots of fights were had with like roommates or like even, family members. And now I look at it differently. Like I'm almost thinking like, you know what? I get to do the dishes because we were able to have a meal together at home. And I guess maybe having a little bit more gratitude with that has really been helpful.
Gratitude mindset, right?
Yeah. And honestly, so I used to hate doing the dishes really, and because we don't have a dishwasher either. And at first, when my son was really little, like newborn sleep, that's like a whole different type of sleep than any kind of sleep. But I just remember that was the time I could have like 15 minutes to myself. I could listen to a podcast or listen to music or nothing and just like look out the window and like be totally present. I had this like moment just to myself. So it just really helped me reframe it. And so I have this example back to the mopping of the floor thing. So sometimes people will find like if they have a lot of excess things that you just end up like, first you have to move all of the stuff before you can even mop or sweep the floor. So I found by like reducing that so I don't have that issue anymore because I've really reduced some of the inventory. And sometimes we acquire things, but then you just kind of apply that container concept. And usually when I find like, oh, I'm past my clutter threshold. Okay, let's go back to that. Oh, okay. Well, now we need to check out our system. We need to, I see this bin is overflowing. Okay, let's go through it. And so I don't always have a timeline for when I'm going to go through the things. It's more of like, recognizing like, yeah, I'm kind of feeling a little edgy here. This is getting a little messy. Like, what do we need to tweak? But an example with the mopping of the floor, for some reason, I had made this to be a bigger task than it really was. And I started to think about like, how often do we do that? So I was thinking
our bathroom and our master bathroom. Yep. I'm always like, it takes me 10 minutes.
It's not even to do the basics.
It's not hard, but I put it off for so long and make it this huge elephant.
Yep. And then you're thinking about it. And so then you think about how much time you spend wasting thinking about having to do this thing that you don't want to do because you've made it much bigger than it was. And for whatever reason, I'm like, okay, I know I need to mop the floor. We've had some just muddy shoes. And after a while, you just kind of need to do some of that maintenance every now and then. Yeah. And so I was talking with my brother and sister-in-law. And we were laughing about it. I'm like, I don't know why I'm making this so difficult. I'm just, because I'm like expecting it to take so long and I wanted it to be like really perfect. I'm like, this is silly. Why am I doing this? So I set it up. I made it easier for myself. So I made it really obvious. And I took the mop and I put it right in the middle, right against the butcher block in our kitchen. I'm like, this is going to be happening today. And then I also have like a visual schedule on our refrigerator, which that I found really helpful. I utilize that system for myself to help with figuring out like meals and just like, different, like my son has piano this day or swim or whatever to help stay organized. And then all of a sudden I realized my husband is looking at it and now my son is looking at it. I was like, this is cool. I was using this to help with my brain and keep me organized because visuals are very helpful for me with, if you have a really active mind or you just feel like you're in this busy season of life, visuals can be really helpful. And so I set up the mop in the middle of the room, and then I texted my brother and sister-in-law and took a picture, and I said, it's go time, it's happening today. So then I had accountability. And then I was like, okay, how can I make this more fun? And then I channeled my inner 90s. So there's, my husband's really into music, and so Nirvana, back in the 90s, and there's a song, Smells Like Teen Spirit, and in the episode, or in that music video, back when MTV used to play music videos, there was one where there's like a janitor pushing a mop around. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna channel my inner 90s, I'm gonna play this song, and I'm gonna mop this floor. And so I did, and do you know how long it took me to do?
Not even the song.
Less than 2 songs. I was like, oh my goodness, think about how much time I wasted because I was procrastinating, because I had this vision, it had to be perfect, it had to be this and this and this. And that really prevented me from starting any of the things. So if you can really set it up, like make it really easy for yourself and maybe just start somewhere. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's okay.
Well, just having it easy and then making it fun too.
Yeah.
Like you got music out. I mean, somebody doesn't have to get like thinking about the music video, but like I know if I have like a cleaning day, if you will, or a moment, if I put on music and kind of like get in my mind, then I feel like I can be there, right?
Well, and this also relates to kids too.
Yeah.
You know, because having them willingly help with housework is a journey. It's part of growing up and it can be challenging. But I know like when we put on music, I mean, sometimes it just drowns out the arguments, which is equally helpful for me. Yeah. But also it can add fun into the home. But I mean, even figuring out other ways that you can bring fun into the chores, you know, like even for little kids, for toddlers, I just know for my kids, it was always like some kids get really stressed out with like a timer. But if you don't do that and you just say, you know what, for 5 minutes, we're all going to run as fast as we can, clean up as much as we can. And at the 5 minutes, we're done. Like it doesn't have to be perfect, but we're just going to all do this and it's going to be fun and we're going to run around and we're going to have fun and you can be loud. Or even for my kids, if they both have a set of like Bluetooth headphones, if they're having a day, I will sometimes just set up a podcast for each of them on their own to listen to and they can go and do their cleaning of their room or in the basement or whatever while they're listening to something that they enjoy. So I think what you were just talking about bringing fun into it is like a life lesson for so many things.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I'm learning this too with my son, he's wanting to be more independent, but also he's at this stage where like, so we're exploring meal preparation and I'm learning like that's really hard for me and having to recognize like okay there's going to be messes and trying to be okay with it, but also like trying to be in this mental mindset that to do it maybe during times where you're not feeling like you have a rushed time. And so that's been very eye-opening for me, really having to take a step back and be like, okay, he's learning and how can I help support him with his learning, that I also need to, you know, check my own self-regulation too.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and something we talked about in the first episode that I found I love your perspective on it, and I think I even mentioned it in this one earlier, is just that like bless someone else mindset. How can we incorporate our kids into having that mindset when it comes to, I mean, the toys and activity things are just endless. I mean, there's birthdays, there's Christmas, there's gifts from very loving grandparents. The things coming into the home, even if you're trying your best to keep things decluttered, it happens when you have kids. So how can we involve them in that bless someone else mindset?
Yeah, I think, you know, and this is something I'm learning and growing with as well, because I don't want to, you know, make it feel like it's mandatory, you have to get rid of your favorite things kind of approach. It's not that at all. It's more of like, wow, buddy, you know what? I'm noticing that like this cabinet is like, we can't fit any more stuff in it. And, you know, maybe if the holidays are coming up or Christmas is coming up, like there might be some more things to fill it. Or when you do have the things, like what do you want to fill it with first? And usually we like have some friends or family that, you know, like, oh, so-and-so loves cars or would love this. So trying to, he's my son. I feel like we've kind of been doing this at a younger age, and we like have a family where he's the youngest. So like when his older cousins will share some of the clothes with him when they outgrow it. So it's almost like, oh, remember how like Jack had the Jack me downs or had some of his clothes for you? Well, now it's like, well, now you're growing. Now like, well, maybe we can, you know, pay this forward so someone else can have some of those clothes too. So really like, I guess incorporating some of that container concept and maybe making it come from the mind frame of like, yeah, let's bless someone else with it. We're no longer needing this anymore.
Well, and you can apply that to toys too.
I was going to say, even just helping them pick out containers for their certain toys. Like why don't we go pick out something that you're going to keep your stuffed animals in, right? But when this gets full, that means it's time to gift some old ones if you're receiving new ones. So kind of getting them involved in the container concept would be really good too.
Well, and sometimes people, like if you like to do rummage sales or like to do that sort of thing, for me, I find sometimes that can be a lot of extra things. But there was one, I think they had like a Park and Rec where the kids could have a rummage sale.
Oh, yeah.
And take some of their items, and then afterwards, like if we had extras, we donated it. But any of the items that he did sell, then he could use that money towards books or towards something that he was wanting to save up for. So that's kind of applying both concepts and learning a little bit about like money management.
Well, I know we've talked about toys too. Like you like a toy rotation.
Yes, yes. So this was kind of fun. So when my son was really little, well, I'm thinking like when he was around 2, this was a good age to do it. I had this bookshelf that was only just like one level. So it was very durable. It was one that, you could literally sit on top of it if you wanted. So you could have items on top of it if you wanted to, or you could keep it bare. And then there were just like 5 little cubbies. And I only put like one toy in each of the cubbies when he was little. And then I would just rotate it. And it was really fun. Like I had so much fun when he was sleeping. I would go and like trade or switch out the toys and put them in there. And it was so fun to see him come out and be like, oh, Mom, or just see like, it was almost like Christmas time. And then at some point he's like, we did it so much, and we were constantly rearranging the room and trying different things, even just to help with sleep, like the floor bed, or that really helped a lot. But just different concepts to help throughout the different seasons and where we were in that season of life. And it was really cute because he would start helping with moving things around and be like, Mom, is it time for toy rotation? And he would help me with it. But that's kind of nice too. If you're feeling really detached or you're on the fence about something, maybe having a marinating shelf, or, having like a container that you put some of the items in, or if you're doing a rotation, but just remember to apply the container concept.
Yeah,
otherwise that can spill over as well.
Yeah. Well, this was a great episode, just helping parents to really manage the clutter and the chaos that's in their home. So thank you for sharing all of those tips. In our first episode, we talked through multiple ways that you can work with April. She does workshops, in-person workshops in the community. She also has a YouTube channel. She does an In the Community episode where you can be learning from other businesses in our area that might be able to support you within your home to feel more functional and supportive. But then she also does do free consults. So if you're interested in learning more from April about how you can help your home specifically, feel free to go to her website and look up any of these options. April, can you share what your website is again for us?
Yes, if you go to functionalliving.life.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, we have another episode coming up next where we're going to be talking about the little bit older population and helping them to live in place and live happily within their homes. So stay tuned for the next episode. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving a rating or review or sharing it directly with a friend who could benefit from the information? We know that you're a busy mom or caregiver, and our goal is to make your life easier by bringing tips and tricks directly from experts into your earbuds. By sharing this episode with someone you love, you can play a critical role in helping to make their life easier as well. We appreciate your time, and thank you for being a part of the Motherhood Alliance family.